There are three different elements in a career, right? Or in our professional journeys. That's how I would frame it. One is a job, second is a career, and third is
Back in the day when I was the person saying no, that an AI should not take a decision of someone's whether or not someone should be hired or not, right? All the way to now where I actively make sure that each and every candidate goes through an AI interview before they come to me.
I have kind of navigated my career, my professional journey. The first part is how do I look at EQ over IQ, right? So it's more about understanding what your strengths are, your developmental areas are, be emotionally aware. And this is something which
Seen people build a solution and then find the problem, like, all across the world. Flow of information in an organization, no matter how big or small, should be from the ground team and coming to up. It should not be that the leadership takes the decision without even knowing what the ground team is dealing with. Let's start off with firstly your intro, right? The audience would love to know who you are, where you're from, and what made you change your mind to come to this podcast. But yeah, in all honesty, Sunil, your career trajectory has been amazing. We have seen your LinkedIn, we have seen the college that you're from, and we have also seen what you've been doing in Microsoft. So why don't you tell the viewers, tell the audience who you are, what you have been doing, and how did you end up at Microsoft as in the HR leadership?
Well, thank you so much for having me here, Tarun. I wouldn't call my career atypical, but there's been a lot of crisscross which has happened in my career. The paths which I've traversed have not been conventional, is how I would put it. So I started my career by qualification as an engineer. I did my electronics and communication engineering, and after that I worked in a services organization in Cognizant as a software engineer in the quality assurance department. After that, I was always fascinated by systems. I was always fascinated by structures. How do we get closer to the business? How do we get closer to the customer? How do I get closer to the strategy? Those were the things which I was looking at. And from that perspective, I thought doing an MBA will help me achieve all of these aspects. And I got an opportunity to do my MBA from XLRI Jamshedpur. Did my summer internship from ITC and then got a pre-placement offer. And did a bunch of things in ITC. One thing led to another. Started across multiple roles, HR business partner, field, factory, heading HR for one of the SBUs, setting up multiple businesses, new ventures in ITC. So that is the kind of journey which I undertook. And at one point in time, I was thinking I should be leveraging my skills, testing my skills in a different sector as well. That's when I was thinking, what are the sectors I need to be looking at? And technology was top of mind. It's on everyone's top of mind these days. So that's where I thought it'll be a good pivot for me to anchor. And that's when I moved to Microsoft. It's been my third year at Microsoft right now.
I've always heard that in India, at least, people first do engineering and then try to follow their path.
Very true.
Yeah. So is that something that also happened with you? Like, were you interested in systems and I would say org structures before engineering as well? Or like, how was that part of Sunil's life?
No, I would say I wanted to be a proper engineer in the sense. I was always fascinated by technical aspects and technology. And in fact, I was even at some point in time planning to do my master's in the US.
Okay.
And then things took a different turn because of the recession in 2008, 2009. And one thing led to another. And then at one point in time, I thought, okay, I think I need to pivot my career around MBA. And I took up a job in Cognizant, and that's how things took a different turn.
By the way, this thing happens with a lot of folks, especially like, my friends, my people that I've known. along the years, a lot of engineers are now turning towards MBA as a pivot to find new career paths. What are your thoughts on that?
There is space for multiple types of skills, and the more the background people come from, the better the output is, right? So even if you look at it from a B school perspective, a lot of B schools right now focus on how do we increase the diversity, right?
Yes, yeah.
And that is not primarily from the gender diversity perspective. It is also from what are the backgrounds they're coming from. What are the thoughts, what are the perspectives which people could gain by doing such sort of courses? That's how a career shapes. So I would say there's no fixed career path, and like what we say in the corporate world, it's not a linear path, right? It's a jungle gym.
Yes.
So career happens in multiple ways for different people. I would say, be it engineer, be it non-engineer, everyone brings in their own sets of advantages, their strengths, and everything contributes. Finally, we are looking at how do we add value to the businesses which we operate in, and having multiple perspectives definitely helps that.
How was the life at XLRI?
I would say it took a drastic turn in terms of my own worldview after getting into XLRI. So one, I would say the peer group is something which is extremely good. So you get to interact with a lot of people from different backgrounds, different parts of the country. So you get to learn a lot from them. So it's not about the course curriculum. It is primarily about the peer group wherein you start to get to learn a lot. So that's number one. Second is, I would say there is a lot of rigor in the curriculum, right? So it's not just about academics. There is a bunch of extracurricular, co-curricular activities that get
I've
anchored.
heard a lot of great things about XLRI and how, I would not call it stressing, but how breathtakingly hard it is on a general day. And I think that's the lovely part of it.
I would say it prepares you for the future. And like you rightly pointed out, the rigor helps you in a lot of ways, right? So it prepares you. You cannot take things easy in campus. It's not just academics, right? So there's a bunch of other things which make you more of a holistic individual. A lot of assignments, case studies, pre-reads, teamwork, all of this happens at campus. So I would say a lot of things which I did not probably experience in engineering, I got to experience at XLRI. Diversity, for instance, that's what we touched upon, right? So we get to meet people from different backgrounds, different communities, people who've grown up the hard way, people from different facets of life. You get to experience all.
Yeah, I do believe that an MBA helps in expanding your worldview a lot. Do you think that's also necessary for some time in your life to just take a break, as I like to call it, right? Take a break from the job, the daily hustle, and just sit back and upskill.
Upskilling is definitely one thing which matters a lot. There are three different elements in a career, right? Or in our professional journeys. That's how I would frame it. One is a job, second is a career, and third is calling, right? Job is something which you do just to a means to an end. Right?
Just to get by.
You have to pay your bills.
Yes.
You've graduated. You have to fund for your family. So there are a lot of things which are there. If there's an education loan, you need to fund that education loan. So that takes care of the job part. The career is wherein you gain a lot of skills. You start investing in your career. The company also starts investing back in you. So it's a mutual two-way trusted relationship that exists based on the skills which you've acquired over a period of time to do that. A calling is what I think finally we are speaking about, right? Yes. What is your purpose? And many of the times this could be happening at different points in time for different people. So the calling is where the purpose actually exists. And once people start finding their calling and that matches with their core values, they start pursuing and adding value to and solving problems for the world.
Yeah. You just made me remember one of my ex-founders that I used to work with. His name is Neeraj Sagar. He found his calling at the age of 57. He started his own company called Wisdom Circle. And his calling was that as soon as his hair got white, people started treating him different. And he realized that no, people over the age of 60, over the age of 70, they still want that respect in the workspace and they want dignity. That's how Wisdom Circle started. But no, that's really true. Like, there's no point in stopping
Yeah.
to taking a pause and upskill. You can upskill at any point of time,
Yes.
and at the same time, when you find your calling, you just go full throttle on it.
Yeah, I think if there is a purpose behind whatever you do, there is relevance, and then you start upskilling yourself. Otherwise, it's more of knowledge consumption which happens. You don't know where to apply that.
That's fair. So yeah, I mean, from a tester, you went to XLRI, your life completely changed, and you went. What was the first thing that you did when you got out of XLRI? Like, what was your first job like in the new world, as I like to call it, with your expanded worldview? When you got back into, hey, now I got to do a job. What was the first thing that you did at ITC?
So at ITC, it was a greenfield role. In a sense, it was a role which was created for the first time. It was literally a greenfield because I was supporting the agri operations.
Okay.
So it was the back end for all of the FMCG businesses. Right. So I had a lot of interface with the farming community, with the stakeholders who actually enable crop development in the villages of India. Right. So that was the first job, and I was the HR business partner there.
And so, what was it like? Because I think a lot of people that I know still fear the transition, fear the how am I going to do this if I've never done this before? And this was, I'm assuming, your first time doing this on board. How was that experience? How was that feeling like of just letting go of everything that you have learned in the past and starting something new?
I think the first part is looking at what are the new skills which I could learn, right? And getting to the roots of the business helps you understand operations better. And when you understand operations better, you understand you're not sitting in cozy AC offices doing things which probably would be good in presentation decks, but you are actually on the field trying out different things, understanding how the business works, how the value chain works, and that gives a lot of understanding of what it takes to build a business. So the initial grounding is what helped me in understanding, hey, this is how a business functions, and it gives you one, apart from the grounding, it helps you understand how does information flow in an organization, and more importantly, it helps you understand how do decisions flow in an organization. Right? So we might think that these could be routine jobs, we are meant for strategy, but I think what is very important is we need to understand operations, because all of the businesses which sustain for long run are completely dependent on operations. Yeah.
I mean, from ITC to Microsoft, how was that career like? And like, I think that'll be for the first segment, right? And then we'll move into a first topic of the day. But I mean, would love to know more about ITC to Microsoft from this side of the world to the completely other side, right? Moving to the tech industry, which has been on everyone's mind. That is your second transition, I would say, after MBA.
Yeah.
How did that feel like?
I was thinking about how can I leverage my skills in a different sector, a completely new sector. And that's when technology was top of mind. And I thought it's a good opportunity for me to make a difference, leverage my skills in a different organization, different sector. How does that sector work? How is it very different from whatever I've experienced until now? Because one is I would be adding value based on my experiences. Second is I would also get to understand how technology sector works, right? So that was the thought process behind making that particular move. And of course, it has been a roller coaster of a ride, is how I would like to put it.
Any advice for, and I mean, before you move on to the next section, right? Any advice for youngsters who are now planning on switching their careers? Because believe me, there are a lot. I work also in the hiring sector, so I know that a lot of youngsters are now looking to change, right? Whether it's about their career paths, whether it's about their companies, or whether it's about their, hey, I want to pick up new skills. So you firstly from the HR background, and also someone who has experienced a lot of change in your life. What is the one piece of advice you would want to give to youngsters?
I would look at it from the perspective that this is probably the age of intelligence, and you have intelligence at the click of a button these days.
Yes.
You have a lot of data, a lot of information, a lot of intelligence to consume. So people who are entering the workforce right now should be focusing on how do they channelize all of their energies, how do they focus on structuring multiple aspects, the information which is available to them, and then how can they zero in on what are the skills which they need to focus on, right? The way I'm looking at it is the qualifications, the degree might get obsolete going forward. It's more about the skills which is going to come into the picture. So people should be focusing on how do they continuously upskill themselves, how do they learn newer aspects of how the world works, and that's what is going to help them in good stead in the future.
While it's also very perfect segue to the next side, I'll just take maybe one more division called the new aspect of the new world, which is introduction of AI into almost everything.
Yeah.
Right. So while the next segment will be a broad level understanding of AI in HR, what are your general experiences with AI implementation in an organization as a whole? How organizations and individuals both have been adopting it, and where do you think, where do you think we are right now when it comes to general implementation of AI?
I think the rate of diffusion of this particular technology, Tarun, has been extremely fast. It has been really staggering. And if you look at other eras of how technology has evolved, it was going and disrupting other industries. Tech was disrupting other industries. Right now, it is tech disrupting technology. So that's a major shift in terms of how things have evolved, right? And as far as coming to AI itself is concerned, if you look at the rate of adoption of different technologies, I'd say which different technologies took 100 million, if you look at 100 million users from an adoption rate perspective.
Yeah, I mean, look at smartphones like back from like 2000.
That took, I think smartphones in fact took 16 years to reach 100 million users, and then ChatGPT took only 3 months.
So let's talk about the core topic of the day, right? AI in HR. And I'll be completely blunt. I think I was listening to this one TED talk that sort of converted into a book called The AI Snake Oil, where we discuss about how AI should not be responsible for hiring as a whole, because it can change. Like, that's someone's life that is depending on it. Since an AI cannot be held responsible, or a system or a computer cannot be held responsible, it should not be used to make the final call, right? So starting from that point of the life, now running an AI native hiring agency, I've also learned a good ton of things. But I want to know from you, and not just from the Microsoft side of things, but as an HR who was leading the space, what are your thoughts in this broader implementation of AI in HR, from back in the day when we used to call it ATS screening, right, to now actually candidates giving interviews to an AI bot. Where do you think we are right now?
So I would say 2 years back, everyone was asking about what is AI. And right now people are talking about how do I make AI real for my organization. So things have evolved pretty quickly. I would say the first half of 2025 and probably 2024 as well, these period of 18 months, that was primarily about experimentation, pilots. That is what was happening in the field of HR as well. The second half of 25 and 26, the way I'm looking at it is the period of making things real. It is more about innovation. It's more about transformation. And when we talk about transformation, things are going to go very steep. That's the way I look at things, right? And specifically, Tarun, there are, I mean, it's not just about hiring. There are multiple facets of HR which could be impacted by AI. And I would look at it in 4 different levels, right? Level 0 is what we use for basic productivity, efficiency, a lot of things, right? So things like, say, organizing inboxes, writing communications, because as businesses, we write a lot of communication. So how do we gain more efficiency, more productivity out of that, right? So that's level 0. That's the fundamental, that's the low hanging fruit. Level 1 is how do we use it for any sort of knowledge retrieval. Okay. So there is a lot of unstructured data which is available, right? Say, for instance, HR policies. So that could be residing in multiple places in an organization. So how do we use that for knowledge retrieval, right? So anything pertaining to policies, for benefits, for onboarding, for instance. The next level is when you ask AI to do a few tasks for you, right? And this could be simple tasks, these could be complex tasks. And that is what finds a lot of use cases as far as the talent acquisition space is concerned.
Yes, yeah.
Yeah. So, for instance, anything pertaining to skill matching, anything pertaining to getting resumes, finding profiles which match your skills, doing job descriptions, setting up meetings between the candidate and the hiring managers. All of these are tasks. AI can take over any of these tasks. Right? So it could be helped in doing all of these simpler tasks and complex tasks as well. So that's level 2. Level 3 is where the actual business transformation happens, right? So here, when I say about business transformation, we need to understand what is the business strategy, and then how is the HR strategy emanating from the business strategy, and look at aspects pertaining to workforce planning, right? So what are the niche skills which you would want to invest 18 months down the line, right? So AI can help in that. That's going to be
forecasting.
Yeah. Second is any sort of prediction, right? So any sort of talent hotspots which you can get within your current organization. If you look at skill mapping, right? So what are the current skills which are existing in your organization? Look at what are the capabilities which you need to invest going forward, right? How do you look at retaining critical talent, right? So these are the aspects which are going to be transformational, right? So the first level 0, if it gives you 10% improvement in productivity, these are going to give you 10x in terms of product.
I would want to ask a question regarding this structure. Where do we give these systems more autonomy for decision making, and where do we take it away? Because I feel, and especially for a lot of smaller organizations, that they are now relying more for the level 4 on these AI systems than they should, and less for level 1 to 3 than they should, right?
Yeah.
Because I feel that level 1 to 3 has very limited. I mean, level 3 has some level of it, but level 1, 2, and like level 0, they have very limited decision making power. By decision making power, I really mean something that can alter the trajectory of one's life.
Yeah.
Right. While as in level 4, obviously change the trajectory of the entire organization. So obviously all of its employees and complete life cycle. But I feel a lot of founders, and I mean like early stage founders, are focused on building strategy using AI rather than automating smaller tasks from it. What are your thoughts on that?
If we have to look at it from an organization's perspective, one needs to understand what are the low-hanging fruits which they would want to address in the beginning, right? What are the pain points from an organization's perspective? And that's how they need to look at it from an AI strategy for themselves. It is not about, there are multiple tools, shiny tools, which are there in the market. I needn't go after those shiny tools.
Yes.
But what I need to understand is what is my actual problem which I'm looking to solve, right? There is space for automating routine tasks. There is space for looking at how do we look at it from a strategy perspective also. But again, how do we determine where should be the human in the loop is what we need to figure out.
Very, very important.
So I think you would have a lot of experiences in this particular field, right? Especially in, terms of AI ethics and how do you look at responsible AI. So I think you would be having a lot of experience.
Yes, I mean, back in the day when I was the person saying no, that an AI should not take a decision of whether or not someone should be hired or not, right? All the way to now where I actively make sure that each and every candidate goes through an AI interview before they come to me. There's been a lot of changes, and I really believe in the human in the loop system.
Yeah.
Each and every interview, whether it happens today or whether it has happened 1 month ago, needs to be verified that, okay, while AI has matured in the last, not mature, but at least really grown in the last 3 years, there's still a lot more scope. When it comes to ethics, no system can be held responsible, so no system should be held accountable for making a decision. So I make sure that each and every decision goes through it. So I make sure that every process, even though we are making it more and more efficient, the more humans we add in the loop, the more we make sure that, okay, these are actually working well. These systems are still working well. And at the same time, no human is getting his or her chance, getting cut down because they did not pass through a system or program.
No, that's a very interesting point, Tarun. In fact, while I'm reflecting, there are two large elephants in the room, right? As far as these aspects are concerned. One is bias, like what you mentioned. And of course, we've seen examples in the past of a large tech giant implementing AI for their recruitment.
Yes, yeah.
And then there were a lot of biases which were found. And what it ended up doing was that it downgraded a lot of resumes of women. So what is the data which you use for training, and how are you making transparency a very core element of designing your AI systems becomes a very important aspect. That's the first elephant in the room which needs to be addressed.
Yes.
The second is, of course, data security and privacy, right? And this, again, as far as HR data is concerned, every data is confidential. There is a lot of PII information which HR records have. So how do you use that data wisely? And how do you ensure, for instance, if you and me are colleagues, I shouldn't be having access to your compensation data, right?
Correct.
That becomes the key. And of course, the point you mentioned on trust and transparency is very important as well. In fact, I mean, when we were discussing about a lot of AI vendors and startups coming into the picture, and one such instance was that it was an AI tool, and that AI tool was supposed to predict the risk of whether the candidate would be joining or not, and then it will give a percentage. Right? And then there were a lot of questions in the audience as to, hey, how does this system even work, right? And then I don't think the person who was actually giving the demo had the answer. The person said, hey, this is all AI generated. Right? So that brings to the question of how do we look at trust and transparency? I cannot be using the same yardstick in an organization. For instance, if Tarun doesn't get promoted, I cannot say that, hey, AI did not promote you. So it's very important to ensure that there are no black box algorithms.
What is the one thing that organizations should keep in mind?
I would probably take a step back, Tarun, right? I would look at, first of all, not just your AI strategy, but what is your overall business strategy? So that it all starts with that, right? It's not about probably adopting tools, because tools is only a tool, right?
Yeah.
So we need to start with what are the business problems, the core business problem, and then from there we need to look at not just the AI strategy, but the overall, the HR strategy, the talent strategy, and where does AI fit into all of these scheme of things, right? So that's probably step one. So just because AI is available doesn't mean I should be using AI. Right? So AI for the sake of AI is probably the biggest pitfall which many of the organizations get into. Right? So there could be a lot of fear of missing out, and in that fear of missing out, people might not evaluate all the dimensions of AI. So they might look at adopting AI as soon as possible without having sufficient guardrails in place. Right? So how do we determine that is something which becomes a very important part. That's number one. I would like to take one small example as well. Right? Okay. So if you look at any sort of ERP implementations in organizations, the senior leadership takes a call saying, hey, we'll go with this particular ERP. But if you look at it, the adoption rate of many of the ERPs, especially during the initial periods, is very, very low. So the person actually who's working on the ERP day in and day out, they get involved at the last moment, and they don't have full visibility as to why the decision is taken, and what are the pain points which are there, right? And how do my pain points get addressed, right? So this brings me to another aspect, right? So how do we look at human-centered innovation, right? So which means we might have the AI strategy, but of course we need to go to the actual users on the ground and figure out what are your pain points and how do I address your pain points. And that's the best part about AI right now, is that you don't need experts to come and tell you. In ERP, for instance, ERP implementations, we used to have functional expert. So functional expert would come, understand your business requirement, and they will say, is this possible, not possible, right? But as far as this particular aspect is concerned, as far as AI implementation, AI adoption is concerned, you can have a lot of tech-savvy influencers in your organization, right? So people who are tech-savvy, of course, there are a lot of low-code, no-code platforms which are available right now, which means you needn't be an expert. You can just be a generalist. You understand, okay, what is happening. You understand your own pain points, and you look at ways as to how can you address it better. It comes to, should I do AI for the sake of AI? If, for instance, I have a 200-member organization, I say have less than 10 or 15 requisitions per month to close. Do I need AI for that? I don't need, probably. Right? So manual, the application tracking systems might still work fine. Right?
And they'll actually give better quality as well.
Yes. So AI for the sake of AI is something which obviously we should be avoiding. The second part, again, is looking at how do we evaluate these multiple vendors. Right? So again, brings back to the aspects of how do we look at, say, interoperability, right? So for instance, if I'm purchasing a tool, I don't want to purchase some 100, 200 tools, right? One for, say, setting up meetings, one for, say, setting up interviews, one for looking at attrition prediction, one for analyzing employee sentiment. So I don't want a bunch of tools, right? So how can one or two tools work with my existing platforms? And there is a lot of interoperability. Right? So I need tools which need to cater to these sort of solutions. Right? So that's probably one of the ways which organizations should be looking at. The other part is obviously the entire piece on ethics that we were discussing, right? And the use of responsible AI. So is the organization, or in fact the vendor, providing services for helping me with responsibility, right? It should not be just a flashy tool. A tool does probably what it is supposed to be. Yeah. But finally, who's accountable for things, right? So leadership, the person on the ground will be accountable for the outcomes, especially in an organization context. So how do we weave in that accountability is what we need to be looking at, right? So which means the vendors or the providers of these tools should also be thinking about responsible AI, and should also help organizations in setting up these governance mechanisms. So the aspects which we discussed on trust, transparency, bias, data security, so all of these aspects should be addressed by the vendor. In fact, many of the organizations should be pushing back the vendors, right? Because what I feel is that this is a new field, completely new field. Right? And everyone is trying to understand this, right? So if something is not working for your organization, don't just procure that solution. So it shouldn't be a solution looking for a problem, right?
Yes, honestly, so many times I've seen people do that, right? Seen people build a solution and then find the problem, all across the world. The final section of the day, which is, and I like to personally call it 3x3. So what we do here is we give 3 pieces of advice to 3 different target audiences based on your life experiences, your experiences. I mean, your experience as a person, as a being, right? Who has scale and learned so many things in such a short span of time, right? Who has experienced transition, experienced corporates, experienced changes, and and experienced people as well, right? Directly. So we start off as a 3x3. So you give 3 pieces of advice to each of the 3 target audience. The first one are I would say, your people that you're looking up to you, right? It can be juniors, it can be students, it can be like early working professionals. It can be anyone who is right now looking up to you and looking at a place from aspiration, that hey, I want to be where Sunil Kamath is right now. And what are those 3 pieces of advice that you would give to someone, right? What to do, what not to do, and maybe I would say a couple of books that you have read that have helped you.
These have been some of my learnings, right? In a way, I have kind of navigated my career, my professional journey. The first part is, how do I look at EQ over IQ, right? So it's more about understanding what your strengths are, your developmental areas are, be emotionally aware. And this is something which I've learned it during my initial formative years, right? I feel that everyone who's entering a particular organization would definitely, or a particular field, might be having that level of IQ, but what separates people is the judgment part, the emotional quotient part. How do you look at that being the difference? The second, what I feel is that, again, growth mindset is something which is very important. And potential is something which can definitely be nurtured. So how do you look at growth mindset? How do you look at learning from your failures is what keeps you going, and you start becoming a better professional by the day, right? The third aspect of this, there's this framework called a player mindset versus victim mindset.
Okay.
And a player mindset is what sometimes sets us apart, right? So a lot of times when things happen to us, we blame it on extraneous factors. We say, hey, this happened and that is why things did not go my way. But it will be very important to think from our perspective, how could I have influenced this situation better? And how could I have looked at solving this particular problem? Right? So that is a kind of player mindset which anyone would want to have.
The final part of the podcast. We have a core ethos of continuous upskilling, right? Based on a conversation, we have already learned that how you kept on learning at every part of your career. Every part of your career, you wanted to learn, you wanted to upskill. So, what are your 3 favorite books that you would recommend that everyone, whether they are in your field or like, as a general recommendation, should learn, should read, and should just explore?
The first book I would recommend is Work Rules, and this is by an author, Laszlo Bock, and here it talks about how does the author go about setting up the entire HR practices for Google, right? From the days of the startup of Google, and how he goes about setting up the entire culture of Google. So that's a very interesting read. You could always go back, refer to a lot of things, because that helps in what a different organization is doing at different points in time and different stages of their organization's maturity. So that's one book. Second book I would recommend is Wabi Sabi. And this is one philosophy which someone recommended to me. It's an interesting Japanese philosophy. It talks about nothing is perfect, nothing is complete, nothing is permanent. So there's a lot of transience in our life, and it's a good book to reflect on, right? Be it from a personal angle, from a professional angle. It helps. We always search for a lot of perfection, but I think this book helps us reflect and embrace the imperfections in life. So that's number 2. The third book, which again I've been supporting the disability ERG at Microsoft, and there's a book called Demystifying Disabilities, right? So that's one book which I would recommend in terms of how do we ensure that there is inclusion from a workforce perspective, and ensuring that everyone thrives in the organization.
Thank you so much, Sunil, for being a part of this conversation, right? There's so many things that people have to learn from you that I actually learned from you today. And we believe that these kind of conversations, right, we should keep on having for the betterment of the world, for betterment of every person who is looking up to us, for betterment of organizations that we're leading, for better of the peers that we have with us. Right? And yeah, this conversation has been truly amazing. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, sir.